better. It's more than just a word.
It's a promise to give our best, develop better technology, create better care, invest in better access.
When you help our veterans get better, it means constantly pursuing your best.
There are thousands of us giving our best every day to heal millions of veterans. Because this is more than a career. This is your life's work.
Well, happy Tuesday and welcome to VA Careers Live. My name is Mike Owens and I'm a recruitment marketing specialist for the Veterans Health Administration, as well as your host for our weekly segment, Talk About It Tuesday. If you're new to the broadcast, I want to let you know that we are here every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. So feel free to grab a snack, grab something to drink, and join us as we talk about career-related items here at the VA. Now, whether you're tuning in for the first day or you've been with us for the last 2 years, we want you to be part of the broadcast. So feel free to leave any questions and comments in the comment section below. Our team and I will go through those comments and questions throughout the day and throughout the week. And also, some of your questions may be featured on Talk About It Tuesday segments. As you know, we started a new segment at the end of each episode to where we can answer some live questions. So if you want a question answered live on the broadcast, go ahead and submit that below, and that question may be addressed on our live program today. Also, we know that we all know someone who wants to join the VA. We all know we want to work for the VA. We all know someone else that wants to work for the VA. So we ask that you help us get this message out. So with a quick ask, and I want to say, please, can you please share our broadcast? Again, please hit the share button. We have a special hashtag that's just for this program here. That's hashtag #WorkAtVA. Again, hashtag #WorkAtVA. Click the share button and let's get this message out to as many people as possible. So today, before we get into our topic, I was trying to figure out, what's a good discussion question for today. And so I went up and I looked up what is the national, every day there's National Day of something. So I went on and I went to Google and I was like, well, let me see what is today. So today is National Tell a Joke Day. Again, today is National Tell a Joke Day. So if you have your favorite workplace environment joke or your favorite dad joke or whatever, and you want to share that with us right now, go ahead and put that in the comment section. Again, I'm sure everyone that's watching, and I'm sure my team here will be, we can't wait to see those great dad jokes or those work appropriate jokes that you're going to put in the comment section. So with that being said, we're going to go and get into our topic for today. So today we're going to be talking about the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. So back in, I think it was January 2011, there was a presidential study on military spouses and their employment. And from that study, it showed that a lot of military spouses were looking for work, and that military spouses were probably one of the most underemployed groups in the United States. So with that being said, from that study that happened in the beginning of 2011 or 2011, around summer of 2011, a new program was introduced and a new program was born, and that was called the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. What that does is this partnership it allows hundreds of companies, and hundreds of companies are part of this partnership. But what it does, it allows them to be able to connect with military spouses and vice versa. It allows military spouses to connect to a lot of these agencies and a lot of these companies, including government agencies. So obviously, the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs, is one of those agencies that are under the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. And we look to hire a lot of military spouses. So what we tend to do with the MSEP program, that's what's called the MSEP program, it allows military spouses to, explore career opportunities. It allows them to, it gives them the education and training to help them identify academic licensing and credentialing requirements. It gives military spouses employment readiness assistance. And then it connects, the MSEP program connects military spouses with the VA, other government agencies, and other private sector agencies. So it's, if you are qualified, if you're a military spouse, you're qualified to apply for jobs under the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. Now, when it comes to the VA, the VA uses the military spouse option as a special status. So like you may go on to USAJobs or VA Careers and you're looking up the job search and you see different positions and you notice that some positions are open to only federal employees. Some positions are only open to disabled veterans. Some positions are open to all veterans. Some positions are only open to members that are in the National Guard or Reserves. If there's a special category that only that group can apply for that job, that's called the status grouping. So just like veterans and whether you're a regular veteran or a disabled veteran or a federal employee, a military spouse grouping is a special status. So what that means is that if you're a military spouse and that job has a special icon that shows that they are giving military spouses preference for that position, that doesn't mean you're going to automatically get the position. That just means that you're going to get the points to kind of propel you to the top if you're qualified for the position. So obviously, first you have to be qualified for the position that you're applying for. But if it's open to military spouses and you apply for the job under the military spouse preference, then that can help propel your application to the top of the line. You'll get more points for someone that doesn't qualify for the military spouse preference. So to be considered for a military spouse preference or to be considered to be eligible, you have to be the spouse of an active duty member of the armed forces, or you're the spouse of a service member who is 100% disabled due to a service-connected injury, or you must be the spouse of a service member killed while on active duty. So there are three. Again, I'll go over the three categories that you'll be considered a military spouse. One, if you are currently married to someone that's in the armed forces that's currently serving on active duty. If you are the spouse of someone who has a 100% disability due to a service-connected injury. And three, if you are the spouse of someone that was killed while on active duty. Now, the only caveat to the last one is if you are the spouse of someone that was killed on active duty, once you remarry, you will no longer be eligible to apply under the military spouse preference. So just remember that if you are someone who was married to someone that was killed in active duty and you're not remarried, then you can apply for the military spouse preference. But if you are remarried, then that preference no longer applies to you. So make sure you keep that noted if you are thinking about applying for a position within the VA using the military spouse preference. Again, as I mentioned earlier, just like any other status candidates, if you're applying for a job that's open to veterans, and just because you are a veteran doesn't mean you're entitled to the position. You're going to have to compete with other veterans. So same thing with the military spouse preference, unless it's a direct hire or something or a special circumstance. For most positions, if you are, especially the non-clinical positions, if you are applying under the military spouse preference, I want you to remember that you are competing with other military spouses for that position. So I know a lot of times we figure, okay, if I'm a veteran or if I fall under a certain status and this job announcement saying if I fall under this status, I can apply for it. We have to remember that we're not the only one that falls under that status. So again, whether you're a current or former federal employee, you're a veteran or you're a military spouse, if you are applying under any of that, if you're applying under any of those status symbols, then you are competing with other folks that fall into that status category also. So how do I find jobs that are open to military spouses? So what you can do is, well, first of all, let's go over what you need. Again, because like I always say, especially if you're applying for a position, a government position under a special category like military spouse, when you're doing your application, you have to prove that you have to prove what you say you are. So if I'm a veteran, so if I'm applying for a job under veterans preference, in my application, I have to prove that I'm a veteran. I can use a DB-214, or if I'm a disabled veteran, I can use a letter from my physician that says I have this service-connected disability. But same thing with military spouses. If you are applying for an announcement or for a position under the military spouse preference, there's documentation that you need to be able to prove that. So when you're doing your application, first of all, you would need a marriage license. So this will prove that you are married to that person that you say you were married to. So again, a marriage license is one of the things that's required. If you also, along with the marriage license, you will need, if your spouse is on active duty, you can just use a copy of your spouse's orders. So put that marriage license inside of the application, add that set of orders, and that'll be enough to prove that you fall in the military spouse category. If you're falling under the category where your spouse is 100% disabled veteran, you can use DD 214 or a certificate of release or discharge, a DD 214 that shows that, hey, this person was in the military. They're out now and they're now considered 100% disabled. You had that documentation along with the marriage license, then again, that'll prove that you fall under that category. For those who were married or are married, or we're married to someone that was killed on active duty and you're not remarried, again, have a copy of that marriage license. And also there's a form called the Department of Defense 1300, or for short, DD 1300. That's the report of casualty. What that form shows is that your spouse was killed on active duty. You put that in your application and your profile on USAJobs. You add the marriage license, and that'll prove that you also fall under the military spouse category. So how do I find the military spouse categories on USAJobs? So if you go to VA Careers or USAJobs, there's a filter section. You can filter out any jobs. You can filter out there are so many ways you can filter out the jobs that you're specifically looking for. You can filter jobs depending on the actual job title, the pay. If you're looking for GS-13 positions, you can go on the pay and click on GS-13, and every position that's open to GS-13s will pop up. If you're only interested in jobs that are open to veterans, you can click on the veterans icon. It'll show that. Same thing with military spouse. You can go on to USAJobs, and there's a link or a button that says military spouses. You click on military spouses, and guess what? It filters out every job except for the ones that are open to military spouses, and you'll be able to even get a deeper search. If you're just looking for, hopefully that you're looking for jobs here at the VA, you can do a double search. You can do multiple filters. One filter would be for military spouses, and then in the search button, or then you can go to agency and click on Department of Veterans Affairs, and that'll show you only the jobs that are open to military spouses in the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I know that seems kind of elementary, but I just wanted to go over that. But yes, you can filter those jobs. You can filter in many ways. But if you're looking for jobs here at the VA that are open to military spouses, again, go to USAJobs, go to the filter section, click on military spouses, and also click on the Department of Veterans Affairs as the agency, and you'll see all those jobs. And I actually did that search this morning, and there's about a little bit over 520 jobs that are open under the Department of Veterans Affairs, not the whole federal government, just the Department of Veterans Affairs. There's a little bit over 520 jobs that are open that fall under the military spouse category. And I'll just, I won't go over all the jobs, but I just there was a lot of pages. So I just looked up the jobs that were on the first page of that search. And one was a rehabilitation technician that's open in Texas. There's another one that's a housekeeping aide that's open up in Louisville, Kentucky. There's a contract specialist that falls under multiple locations. There's a health technician that's in Virginia. Social services assistant position that's open in San Francisco. There's a lot of IT specialist positions that are open that fall under the military spouse category. There's a purchasing agent that announcement that's open in Louisville. There's another contract specialist job that's open in multiple locations. There's a supply technician position that's open in Louisville. It seems like there's a lot of positions in Louisville. So if you live in Louisville and you're watching right now, you need to be on USAJobs right now. There's a supply technician job open in Memphis. Another contract specialist. If you live in the Fresno, California area, there's a water treatment plant operator position open. There's a peer support apprentice job open in multiple locations. And it just goes on. And that's just page one of the search. That's not all the positions. That's just page one. So again, if you're watching and you are a military spouse and you're looking for employment, which a lot of military spouses are out here looking for employment, and you want to work at the VA, again, go to vacareers.va.gov, or you can go to USAJobs.gov, go to the career search area, filter out all the jobs that are for military spouses under the Department of Veterans Affairs, and you will be able to go through all 500 of those job openings, and I'm sure you'll be able to find the perfect job for you. So that's all I have today about on the MSEP program. Again, that's the Military Spouse Employment Partnership that's started through the DoD. Again, that was a partnership that started back in 2011. After there was a presidential level study on military spouses to find out that there's a lot of military spouses out here looking for work, and that military spouses are one of the most underemployed groups in the federal government and in the United States. So again, if you go to vacareers.va.gov, we have a page we have a section on that website that's dedicated to military spouses. So as I always challenge you every week to go to vacareers.va.gov, and today go and read up on military spouses, and it'll give you all the information that you need. It'll tell you what documents that you would need if you are applying under the military spouse category, and how to get those documents if you don't have them. So with that being said, I think that we're going to answer a few live questions today. So my team has given me a few live questions. I'm gonna just go through them and make sure that see what ones that I have here. Let's see. We have a question. I think this is for Jamala. Does this pertain to military spouses who PCS due to the retirement of their spouse? So when it comes to retirement, unless they were medically retired and have a 100% disability, that would not be considered a military spouse. To be considered a military spouse, Jamala, you would have to, again, either be the spouse of someone that's currently on active duty, or someone who has 100% disability for a service-connected injury, or someone that's the spouse of someone that was killed in active duty. So if your spouse has retired already, then you won't be considered under the military spouse category. But as always, we thank you. I know a lot of people probably had that question and was kind of thinking that. So we appreciate you submitting that question. But to my understanding, again, and we can if what I find out is an error, I'll come back and put it in the comment section. But when it comes to military personnel that are retired, their spouses would not be considered under the military spouse preference unless they were 100% disabled due to a service-connected injury. All right. The next question we have, I think, is from Justin. It says, how early should you apply to jobs on USAJobs? For example, a person retires from active duty in 6 months. When should they start applying? So my first recommendation is be sure that you're actually retiring or coming off active duty. I know a lot of times, and again, I'm also retired military, so I can speak from experience. There was a lot of times when it was time for us, if you're an officer, it's time for your commitment to be up, or if you're enlisted, it's time for it's almost your ETS time, and you're about a year out, and you're thinking, oh man, it's finally that time. I'll be out the military in a year, and then within 6 months, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna sign up for some more time. So first of all, be certain that you are going to get out the military. But I would say that if you're sure that you're getting off active duty, now remember the DoD has a 180-day rule. So if you are applying for a job now, this is only for if you're applying for jobs civilian jobs under the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense has a 180-day window that you can't get off active duty and go straight into a DoD job. That's only for the Department of Defense. But agencies like the VA, you can come on and you can get hired by the VA immediately after leaving active duty. So I would say at least within 90 days. I think that's a perfect time Most positions are open for a few weeks, and the hiring process takes a little while for some positions. So I would say if you're within 90 days out, that's 90 days, that's 3 months. Go ahead and start applying for jobs and see what happens. Sometimes you can get a position and you may get selected and hired for that position, but they'll let you start. Maybe you're still on active duty. You may have like a month left. Sometimes the hiring manager will allow you to push back your start date to when you get off of active duty. Hiring managers have a lot of flexibility but sometimes they need that person to be hired and selected and on the job right then and there. Sometimes it's not as urgent, so they can wait a month or two before that person's actually sitting in the position once they've been hired. So I would say 90 days. If you're within 90 days of getting out of the military, I would say that's probably the perfect time to start applying for jobs. But remember, the Department of Defense, they have a 180-day rule, so you won't be able to get a civilian job immediately if you're applying for the Department of Defense. But if you're applying for the VA, I would say go ahead. I would say 90 days. And people are going to give you different timelines, but that's just my personal timeline. I would say 90 days is probably the perfect time to do that. All right. And I think that's all we have time for today. Again, continue submitting those questions. Even if we don't touch on your question here on the live broadcast, we'll touch on your question in the comment section, and we'll make sure that those questions and comments are answered. But we appreciate everyone who chimes in in our comment section. Trust me, all your comments are read. And if we can answer your questions, we'll try to do our best to make sure that you get the answers to your questions. And again, make sure you submit every week because, again, we're going to have a time where we're going to answer questions at the end of the broadcast. So with that, thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone watching, whether today is your first day or whether you've been watching for the last 6 months, the last year and a half, or the last 2 years. We appreciate you being with us. We enjoy having you with us, and we hope that you tune in to us next week. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.